Did you know that the US is the largest producer of corn in the world? Corn is grown on over 400,000 US farms, producing more than 32% of the world's corn crop. 80% of this corn is consumed by livestock, poultry, and fish production. Each American consumes 25 pounds of corn annually, which means you eat 25 pounds of corn per year. Corn also has many industrial uses. It is found in paints, candles, fireworks, crayons, and antibiotics, just to name a few. Corn is everywhere and a huge part of the US economy.
Corn is being demanded constantly as humans are finding more and more uses for it. Seed companies are working to keep up with this demand, as well as trying to maximize their profits, and that's the problem. Large agricultural corporations select a few seeds that have a high history of yields and genetically modify them to be more resistant to pesticides. Corn breeding companies such as Monsanto, DuPont, and Syngenta focus on efficiency and shareholder profits, which has created a lack of genetic diversity, creating 400,000 vulnerable US farms. Since all these crops' genes are the same, diseases such as gross bacterial wilt is currently spreading across the country and reduces the crop yield up to 50%. The known factors of these diseases are wet conditions, lack of crop diversity, and lack of genetic diversity within crop types in the field. If the crop types were diverse, then these diseases wouldn't spread nationally, since only some of the crops would be vulnerable.
Since a large portion of our economy is generated from this corn production, we have a huge problem that needs to be taken seriously right now. If these seed companies continue to provide us with little to no crop diversity, and these diseases continue to spread across the nation, we're going to need widespread taxpayer bailouts to cover the losses, since crops are insured through subsidies from the government that are built into our taxes. This is a huge economic problem that the government needs to deal with now, because we all have to pay the costs. The seed companies don't have to pay the costs, and they're just raking in the profits. As you can see, corn has the least amount of diversity of all the crops above, but it's not the only crop that is affected by this more recent lack in diversity. The lack of diversity in corn is the most worrisome because the US economy is so intimately linked to corn production. An example of the effects of corn in a global market can be seen between the US and Mexico as a byproduct of NAFTA. US corn flooded the market of Mexico, causing a severe drop in price of all corn. The US corn that was undercutting the Mexican market depended upon the Mexican maize for biodiversity. US corn was more efficiently produced at a lower cost, but at the expense of diversity and sustainable methods.
Unfortunately, public plant breeding funding that farmers rely on for seed diversification was not included in the 2013 Farm Bill as proposed. So what needs to be done? Well, we know a large-scale national diversification is not going to happen overnight. So in the meantime, we need to begin with public awareness by making a biodiversity certification to support small farmers who use diversification. Certifications will create new markets for small farmers to sell their goods and will let consumers know that their products are held to a certain standard, a standard rooted in traditional Mayan farming methods.
Mayan traditional methods have been used specifically for seed diversifications for thousands of years. They use slash and burn methods of farming where vegetation is felled, left to dry, and then burned, with the ash acting as a fertilizer for crops. They plant 2 maize crops each year, the first in May and the second in November. They select the desired traits of the corn, including kernel size, ear size, color, and resistance to pests. And the little effort is made to separate individual varieties due to population growth and a limited amount of land. Their culture has changed due to the availability of money, and a result of Mopian culture is shifting their agricultural methods to lessen crop diversity. They're losing their sense of cultural identity, which has always been closely tied with exotic and diverse maize.
Certification that is reflective of these traditional methods will increase the demand for corn from small organic farms around the country. By increasing the availability of organic and diverse corn, the market for genetically modified and mass-produced corn will decrease because it is not the same quality and lacks the diversity certification. Another way to increase diversity is to promote the creation of seed banks. A third of the world's known plant species are threatened with extinction, and a seed bank will preserve seed varieties, protecting them from famine and disease. Therefore, commercial farmers are able to use a much larger pool of possible crop varieties and maximize their potential yield in terms of the production of corn.
Through seed banks and certification, farmers will be incentivized to use diversification methods, and the popularity of organic methods in small farms will increase. In the future, the government can use subsidies and various other types of funding to help alleviate the cost of production and make organic corn competitive in price to that of mass-produced corn. Not only is it important to make people aware of the diversification certification, but it must be feasible. Seed banks are just the first step, not the whole solution.
Evolutionary gardens, as botanists call them, are small plots where the biodiversity of different species of corn can be tested against the current climate conditions. Plant breeders in the U.S. depend on these gardens as a model to structure and test the biodiversity of our own corn, the best protection against devastating pathogens and pests. There needs to be biodiversity certification standards, just as there are standards for fair trade and organic products. Increasing public awareness about the importance of genetic diversification for crops is imperative. Certification will provide an incentive to support local farmers who uphold beneficial farming practices.
Help us in spreading the word, because corn is a vital part of the global economy, and the first step to ensuring its future is certification based on diversity and sustainability.